after that and watch her try to continue to progress because I like her.
It's obvious she has a relentless drive to keep climbing the ranks. She has incredible hand-eye coordination, letting her take the ball early and change its direction. But the fan energy is what I love, especially when players come from smaller countries. Their passion is unreal when their champion reaches the top. The real main event in Miami was never the championship match. And that's the hard truth nobody wants to face. Two global icons enter the final that should have sold out instantly, but the stadium's true pulse had flatlined days before. Ticket prices fell, the hype vanished, and the crowd just disappeared. What happened? And how could one player completely absent from the court overshadow the entire final? I see some of the coverage, but for whatever reason, I find the negative things about myself more than the positive. So I try to avoid digging into it whenever a picture or story about me pops up. I just, I scroll right past it. I move on because sometimes people online are just vicious. They're cruel to all of us, and I feel it's just not worth the energy to read that stuff. If Eala's game gets your blood pumping like it does ours, then hammer that subscribe button and stick around for every epic point. From the second the Miami Open Women's Final was set, something felt wrong. And it wasn't a subtle vibe that only the hardcore fans would catch. It was a roaring silence that screamed from the empty seats and stacks of unsold tickets. It was a level of apathy no one could have predicted for a title match between two of the sport's biggest stars. She grinds for every point. That's why we back her. She's the face of the Philippines. Beyond her sheer talent, she has a vision for what's next. My dream was always to expand tennis in the Philippines, but now I'm building a new global fanbase for the sport. So whenever Eala takes the court, we all come together as one to watch and cheer her on. You mean there are actual watch parties? For real? Oh, absolutely. We plan our dinners around her matches. On paper, this final should have been a blockbuster. You had Aryna Sabalenka, one of the fiercest hitters in the game, facing off against Gauff, the young phenom groomed for years to be the future of tennis. It was the perfect storm. The kind of clash that networks highlight on their calendars months ahead. The kind sponsors fund without a second thought. This match was going to be massive for both of them. They were both defending a mountain of points right before the clay season. This victory was critical for securing their rankings. Gauff was desperate to win this tournament, and she'd said it publicly. It's her home 1000 level event, and she was hunting for her first trophy of the year, her fourth 1000 title, and her 12th career title overall. Sabalenka, meanwhile, was trying to become just the fifth woman in history to pull off the Sunshine Double, winning both Indian Wells and Miami back-to-back. And still something vital was absent, or to be more precise, someone. Because just a few days before that championship, Miami was held hostage by a name the organizers never saw coming, a player who was never meant to command the spotlight, let alone the tournament's fate. Eala. The second she was out, the entire event fractured. I'm dreading this Miami final for Coco facing Sabalenka. Sabalenka crushed Rebecca in the semi-final 6-4, 6-3, and that wasn't just a lopsided score. She was playing brutal, overpowering tennis. It makes me worried for Coco, but when they play, it is always a war. Their head-to-head record is locked at 6 wins apiece. So they've each beaten the other 6 times. Though Aryna did win their last showdown, so we'll see if Coco has an answer. At first, the warning signs were small. You could almost ignore them if you were committed to the idea that everything was fine. Resale ticket prices started to slip, then dip, then completely crater. The social media buzz for the final just flatlined instead of surging. Broadcasters who banked on huge ratings were suddenly slashing their own forecasts. It made no sense, at least not if you thought the old hierarchy of tennis still controlled what fans cared about. But that entire belief system had started to crumble long before the final match. The rankings were checked, the formulas applied, and the answer seemed obvious. She hadn't earned her spot, but the data couldn't measure the tidal wave she was creating. They couldn't capture how people were being pulled into her orbit, or how her matches were so wildly unpredictable you couldn't look away. And more than anything, they missed how she connected with people far outside the tennis world. We're not thinking about anyone else right now. It's the Eala show. This is her moment. Our schedules, our dinners, our nights are all built around her matches. That is pure fandom. I love it. $27 a month. Come on, you gotta get it. I mean, my bad. $77 for the year. That is a much better deal than your monthly plan. You have to grab that. Can you name one other player besides their own family that has people planning their entire dinner schedule around them? Not for me, maybe my family. No, definitely not even my family. Depends. Depends on what's for dinner. But this whole thing is incredible for tennis. I think athletes like her. From the very first round, something was different. The crowds weren't just there. They came earlier, stayed later, and cheered louder. Her highlights didn't just circulate, they detonated online. People who never watched the women's tour suddenly had a reason to watch. Not for a ranking, but for something more real, a connection. And as she won again and again, that connection became a wildfire the tournament couldn't contain. Her matches became blockbuster events. The stands were packed for rounds that are usually empty. The energy turned from polite clapping into the roar of a hometown crowd, even in a town where loyalty is fickle and focus fades fast. You saw it explode online, where her highlights were blowing past games featuring the biggest names. By the time she clawed her way into the later rounds, the script had already been rewritten and the parallel became undeniable. Because while players like Sabalenka and Gauff are titans of the sport, their appeal has always been built on marketing on hype, on the assumption that crowds will come because it's the main event. Eala broke that formula, music. It's incredible watching a young player rise to the occasion. She looked like she was losing steam in the second set, but she just dug in and fought. And that kind of heart is something we're going to see for years if she can keep this fire burning. Her spirit is just on another level. I mean, the sheer will she showed in that match. Winning big is one thing. But you see her leg, music, wrapped facing a powerhouse like Jessica Pegula. And Coco, just as you said, there were times we thought, okay, this is it. I mean, how often did we stand up in the green laughter? Room about to walk onto the set. Fans weren't showing up because they were supposed to. They were showing up because they needed to. And that single difference is the whole game. It's the gap between scheduled programming and a true phenomenon. It's what separates a match that's big on paper from one that feels electric in your bones. And as long as she was competing, Miami felt charged. Every victory she claimed amplified the event's energy, making it louder and wildly unpredictable. The networks ate up her story. Announcers changed their entire narrative. Music, even non-fans started building their day around her court times, ignoring the official bracket. But then came the breaking point. Sabalenka versus Gauff was meant to be a sellout crowd. A ratings dream, the ultimate finale for the tournament. Instead, it became an object lesson. A lesson in what happens when the one athlete driving real passion is suddenly gone. Ticket sales slowed to a crawl compared to the frenzy seen during Eala's run. The resale market showed a sudden massive collapse in demand. The firestorm that dominated social media fizzled out into routine, predictable chatter, and that's when the truth finally hit home. This wasn't a fluke. This was pure impact. The kind of magnetic pull you can't manufacture, you can't schedule, and you can never replace. So gracious with every one of her fan music, she makes time for them, she signs all the autographs, takes all the photos and reminds the Filipino community that it's all about music the Philippines. And I take that flag with me no matter where I am on the globe. For someone so young to have that kind of wisdom to understand playing for her home, she's only 20 years old. Such composure, she's already an icon for her entire nation. I mean, it's Manny Pacquiao and it's Eala, you know? That's really it. That's the list. Because what Alex brought to Miami wasn't just skill. It was a story with weight. She gave people a reason to invest beyond the rankings. She made the game personal. Early rounds became must-see TV. The tournament bent to her will. Then she was gone, and the energy vanished with her. This left the WTA with a question it could not answer. How does an unseeded player, a complete underdog, become the single biggest driver for tickets and viewership? And more to the point, what does it say about the system when that same star was initially ignored? This is not just about one single tournament, it is about a disconnect Eala exposed in real time. She proved that in modern tennis influence is not just about rankings, but about presence and a real connection, and creating those moments that fans are desperate to see. And in Miami, she accomplished all of it without any institutional support. You are asking about the court change, right? Honestly, I was stunned they were even considering canceling my match or when they offered a couple of other stadiums. I just thought, what is the big deal if Alcaraz and Sinner start later? The night session yesterday started at 9 and Mirra was playing. So I was just really shocked at the idea of them canceling my match, but I decided to play today anyway. That way, if I win, I get a day off to prepare and recharge. Yeah, I was honestly shocked, but I'm happy they gave me a choice so I could decide what was best for me, which just makes the contrast even sharper. You look at the finals and you see two incredible athletes with established careers, global fame, and years of investment poured into their brands. And yet, when it came to raw drawing power during this event, neither of them could touch the buzz Eala created in a few matches. That is not an opinion. That is a fact reflected in the numbers and the attendance. You saw it in how the audience changed the moment she was out. You could feel the difference in the tournament's energy. That part you cannot fake. Eala delivered that feeling. And once the crowd got a taste of it, everything that followed felt quieter, more predictable, and far less urgent. That is why the WTA's decision or their oversight now seems less like a simple miscalculation and more like a colossal missed opportunity to embrace what was right in front of them. They did not start her fire, but they also failed to see it burning bright enough to capitalize on it. What made it all more awkward for the Women's Tennis Association was seeing this contrast play out publicly. The online conversation shifted from who might win the title to a much simpler, blunter question. Why did it feel like this tournament had already peaked before the final even began? Indian Wells is in the books, and since tennis never stops, we are on to Miami. And folks, I have to wonder, is the WTA ever going to drop these graphics any faster? We always wait forever for them, but I digress. Let's get into this draw. Emma Raducanu is in the draw, but she's already gone forced out by sickness. We start with the world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka, fresh off her Indian Wells victory. Now, on paper, Sabalenka's quarter looks less punishing than the others. But danger lurks with Ostapenko, Azarenka and Zheng in her section. As for her opening match, naturally, she gets a first-round bye, then faces either a qualifier or Lee. But a question hung in the air because the tournament's peak had already passed far from the top seeds. It wasn't part of the planned narrative, or the bracket engineered for a predictable finale. The story was Alex Zella. Once you see that the entire event shifts, because none of this was supposed to happen. High-level tennis thrives on order. Rankings set expectations, seedings carve the path. Tournaments are engineered to ensure the biggest stars clash in the end when stakes and viewership peak. But Miami shattered that blueprint. The real drama unfolded off script. What made Zella's rise so stunning was its organic nature, free of the usual hype machine. No pre-tournament campaign made her the event's face. No media blitz called her a must-watch. No one thought she'd become the story. She just played. The world watched. That kind of natural ascent is rare in sports, and when it happens, it hints at more than just one incredible run. It signals a fundamental shift. Sabalenka, of all people, should know the first rule of sportsmanship: win with class, lose with class. To be a champion, you have to lose like 1-2. And belittling Coco's victory, her French Open title, won't dull the sting of your own defeat. The last 2 weeks, I've had some incredibly tough matches. Faced some unbelievable opponents and, I was definitely playing at a higher level before the final. Honestly, it was the worst I've played in, I don't even know, months. The conditions were awful, and she just handled them better. I think it was the single worst final of my career. And that brings us to the ticket sales for the final, which told the real story. It exposed the canyon between the stars the system pushes and the players fans truly embrace. On one side of the net, Aryna Sabalenka and Coco Gauff. Two titans whose rankings and resumes make them undeniable traditional superstars. And on the other, the ghost of a player already gone, whose shadow still loomed over the entire event. That doesn't happen, and it's deeply unsettling for a system that banks on predictable stars for its biggest showcases. The truly complicated part, this isn't a knock against the finalists, because both Sabalenka and Gauff performed. They delivered exactly what was expected: top-tier tennis. Professionalism and a performance that justified their elite status. Discovery, it's the most powerful force in sports. It's that raw feeling of witnessing greatness before the world catches on a moment that feels like yours alone. It's being in on the secret before it becomes the headline. You can't script that moment. You can't buy a ticket for it, and once it vanishes, it's gone. Today was a bit more clean-cut, I'll admit. But this week has been a grind full of battles. Honestly, it's just great to finally win 1 in 2 sets. And you absolutely did. It's safe to say Coco has her fire back. Let's talk about the journey, the rough exit at Dominion Wells, the arm injury. But now you're here. You are playing absolutely lights-out tennis. What happened over these last 3 weeks? Well, yeah. After Indian Wells, I honestly considered skipping this tournament entirely. Which is precisely why the tour's quiet regret isn't just about one call, but what that call exposed. It revealed a system that, for all its design, is completely blind to true momentum while it's actually happening. And by the time the system finally sees it, the real opportunity is long gone. That is the ultimate lesson from Miami. Now they're looking. And if that spark isn't there, they notice. So the question isn't what went wrong in Miami, but what comes next. Because the next time a phenom like Eala catches fire, will the system be sharp enough to elevate them, or will they be stuck watching from the sidelines while the fans crown their own champion?